day of Planet Comicon. Are you guys having fun so far?
Yeah.
Cool. How many of you guys consider yourself writers?
Yeah.
How many of you guys are readers?
Yeah.
How many of you guys like talking about books with people? You're in the right room, congratulations! So today's panel is Booksta Buddies, Building Your Bookish Community, and that goes for both writers and for readers. We have a really fun panel up here. So we're gonna have them go down the line and introduce themselves and their books, and a book that sparked your love of reading.
Ooh.
Oh man.
Oh, wait, should I start? Okay. Sorry. Immediately made it awkward. My name is Julie Murphy. I've written a ton of books. I'm probably most well known for Dumplin', which is also a movie on Netflix. And I've also written the novelizations of Faith, which is a Valiant Comics property. And I've written like a really fun Cinderella retelling for Disney, a modern day rom-com called If the Shoe Fits. And the book that really sparked it all for me is a little book you might have heard of called Twilight.
I'm Simone. I write adult romance in historical and paranormal subgenres as well as contemporary, and now rom-com because Julie's funny, so I get to glom my name onto the funny parts that Julie writes. Be like, yeah, I'm funny too.
And the book is the rom. I bring the com.
That's right.
Oh, that's amazing.
We should put that on the part.
Yeah.
And the book that sparked my love of reading, this is so cliche, but is Jane Eyre. And I sort of feel like every time I'm writing, I'm basically trying to write like a Jane Eyre retelling.
I'm Carrie Beamer. I write contemporary romance set in the 80s, so historical fiction, I guess. My biggest book that I think got me into wanting to write and read would be anything by John Green, especially Looking for Alaska.
Hey, my name is Rachel Newhouse, and I write YA Christian dystopia. And probably the book that got me into reading as a child was The Little Princess, in particular the one with the illustrations by Tabitha. And I read that book probably 10 times growing up.
And then she gave it to me.
Is that the one I gave you?
Yeah,
Oh,
at the Blind Date Women party.
I need it back.
And you notice that all these lovely panelists are writers. We're going to start with making friends as a writer. Julie and Sierra have a really fun story about how they met. Go ahead and tell that, because it just makes me laugh every time.
Take it away, baby.
No, it's your turn. So I started out writing young adult fiction, young adult dystopia, and we have a friend, Julie and I, a mutual friend, who's one of those people who just has to organize everything. And she's one of those people that if she walks into a room, she'll just start organizing strangers. And so it was kind of no surprise in 2013 when she was like, oh no, it was 2014.
2014, her name is Natalie C. Parker.
Natalie
she
C.
is
Parker.
also a KC local.
Yes. And she was like, we're gonna put together a DIY roadside or like a road trip where we were gonna go visit bookstores around the Midwest. And we rented a van, and she was just gonna get all of her friends together to go with her. And so Julie and I had never met. And she was like, you guys will be fine, it'll be fine. And Julie said,
So we pulled up to Sierra's house to pick her up, and I was very grumpy because I had just found out that I was going to have to share a hotel room, and not only a hotel room, but a bed with someone who I'd never met. And I like my personal space, but we were trying to do this on a budget, because we were all like very baby poor YA authors who were not getting paid a ton of money, and also whose publishers weren't like, let me like build out this whole huge book tour for you. So I was taken on for the team. I was going to share a bed with a stranger. And we pulled up to Sierra's house, and I got out of the car, and I said, hi, my name is Julie, and I snore, like just to kind of like set the tone.
and I said, hi, I'm Sierra, and I have narcolepsy, and I can sleep through anything. And from that moment, we just never looked back. Julie could snore all she wanted. No one can wake me up after I'm asleep. It was perfect.
Yeah.
And so we were sort of like, it's funny that we write romance now because we say our friendship started with romance tropes. We had only one bed, and we had insta-love. We were friends right away.
Forced proximity.
Yeah, forced proximity. Maybe a little bit of enemies to lovers. Not for me, but Julie. I had made me into an enemy. And so we were writing YA together as critique partners for a really long time. And then eventually during the pandemic, one night after like way too much pie and watching a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies, that turned into, we should do this together.
Yeah.
And so 8 years later, that friendship became like a co-writing relationship as well.
Yeah, now we're like legally married because our names are in a contract together.
Let's talk about where to meet writer friends. So where are some of the best places that you guys have found to meet other writers? Let's start out with Rachel.
Oh, I'm here. So I would say one of the best places to find writers, obviously conventions are amazing. So obviously if you're at a table, you're at a panel, ask around, but even just walk the vending hall, because there are going to be a lot of authors out there, and then ask them for their card. Make sure you follow up with them on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. Another good place is writing forums. So if you can find a writing forum, especially for your genre, whatever you're interested in, sign up on there, read some comments, hang out for a bit before you try to promote your book or anything like that. But hang out, find out who knows who and who knows what they're doing, and then follow up with them. Sign up with their newsletter, follow them on Twitter. My personal favorite place to find writers is Twitter. And I think it's because it's a text-based social media, so we writers like to be on there because we don't have to take a picture, we can just write. So that's the place where I found the most critique partners, review trades is actually on Twitter.
And I want to add to that with Twitter. Twitter does like a ton of writing contests. There's one called Write Mentor, a guy out of the UK runs, and it's huge. It's how I got my publisher, it's how I got my agent showcase. But you're all kind of in that trench together in this contest, and so you start, messaging each other, realizing you live close, and you meet up, and contests online are a huge deal for writers, I think.
How many of you guys have done NaNoWriMo?
I mean, you do it like every month, basically.
Yeah, I'm like in nano year mo. I feel like I am always like trying to write a book in a month.
So NaNoWriMo, for those who don't know, is National Novel Writing Month. So in November, you try to write 50,000 words of a first draft of a novel. But the forums on that are also really handy. Have you guys had any experience meeting people through NaNoWriMo?
Yeah, so actually my very first debut novel I wrote through NaNoWriMo, and I was a librarian at the time, and I was running programming for my teens for NaNoWriMo, and they were very skeptical of it, as they should be, because writing smells like homework, even if it's not always homework. And so they said, we'll only do this if you do this with us. So that was actually, like, with my teens, like my first taste of community, and I really started to enjoy the word counter on their website. They have a really nifty like word counter that helps you track your progress through the month and like how many words you have to write a day in order to stay on track. And then all the different forums, and also the forums are, they're divided up like locally, and you can find like, write-ins and meetups where people are like, writing all night long for NaNoWriMo and stuff like that. And so those were all things that I found really helpful starting out.
Let's talk a little bit about writing groups and critique partners. Do you guys feel like they're the same thing, or are they different? Why or why not?
Which end are we starting?
Go for it.
Oh,
you
I
look
get first all the
excited.
time. Okay. No, I have an opinion about this. So a writing group and a critique partner are not the same thing. So for me, a writing group is just any group of writers. We get together, we hang out. Some of them are going to do like word challenges or accountability, but a writing group is just getting together with your fellow authors for support. But a critique partner is somebody who I've specifically reached out to and specifically contracted to help me craft my book. And those people I choose very carefully because I need good, solid feedback. So I need somebody who is going to not just say, hey, it's great. I need somebody who's going to tell me, like, this character is doing something they would never do, or this doesn't make sense, or you've gone off on a rabbit trail over here. So those people I pick by either they've got writer experience, or they're experienced readers, or they're in my genre. So for a critique partner, I try to get some people that are like my target audience, like they would buy my book, and I try to get some people that would normally not buy my book, so I can get an outsider's opinion. And not all of your writer friends have to be your critique partners, but as you get to know people more, you're gonna find people that you want to be on your critique group. So like I have a friend on Twitter, and we just started, we traded reviews, we traded books, we just talked a little bit, and then eventually I was like, hey, you write similar fiction, I would like you to be my critique partner, and now he reads all of my books. He helps me set up my con thing, like he helped me get here, like he gives me lots of feedback, because he's been upgraded now to critique partner.
The biggest piece of advice I give about critique partners is do not choose family or friends unless they're super blunt with you, because your mom's gonna be like, it's so good when it's not. So what I did, I worked in a high school when I was writing my second book, and I went to the creative writing class and picked 5 kids that were really interested to read my manuscript, because I write YA, and they tore it up. I mean, they tore it up, but it was good to know that I needed to keep going.
I think that what I really like about a lot of the critique partner relationships I've had is that we've done mutual exchanges, which is good for mutually assured destruction, right? Like you can't be too mean to me because I have your work in progress in my hand. But I also think that the act of critiquing other people's work, and by critiquing I don't mean being critical in the sense that I'm looking for things to attack. I just mean engaging with the text in a meaningful way. That being mutual gives me an opportunity to hone a lot of my editing skills, which I then apply back to my own work. And so I'm a better self-editor now because it's easier for me to see in other people's writing, oh, okay, here's a missed opportunity, or here's a beat that should have been landed on harder. That allows me to go back to my own work and kind of do it a little bit stronger.
Yeah, she said really smart things. I always leave the smart things for her to say. But I will say with writing groups specifically, we do have a group of friends who we love to go on writing retreats with, which if you've never been on a writing retreat, it's fantastic and it's a tax write-off.
Nice.
And it's just, just rent a house in the forest, and maybe it'll be haunted, maybe that'll add to your process, maybe it won't be haunted. Anyways, it's a great time. But I love going on writing retreats, especially when I'm with people who are my critique partners or who I've worked with before, because we can have a lot of just discussion around the table about our books, and it's free flow of information. And then, also being there with the people who you're trading your manuscript on and off with. It's really nice to have FaceTime with them in that sort of way.
How's the best way to go about building a writing group for yourself?
Oh, me again, I'm sorry.
I'm excited every single time I talk about writing groups.
Because I actually do run one. I actually run one through my church. And so I think the best way to start building one is to just be open about the fact that you are a writer. Because if you make it obvious that you are a writer and you are not shy about that, they will come out of the woodwork. People will come out and tell you, oh yeah, I'm a writer, or I've thought about writing, and you will start to figure out who in your circle is interested in writing. And so I did this. I was loud enough at church that I was a writer for long enough that I actually had a pastor come to me and say, hey, we would like to support the writers here. It's going to be you. And so once you do that, for me, it's the consistency is what has been most helpful for us. So we personally meet every other Monday on an evening. It's just an hour and a half, unless we talk too much, then it's 2 hours. And it's just that consistency of that showing up every single time and knowing that Rachel is going to ask you what you did in the last 2 weeks. That's really all it is. I just look everybody dead in the eye and I'm like, did you write in the last 2 weeks? And if they gave me a goal from last week, you're like, did you do the goal? What's the next step? And that's all I have to do. Because I know there's somebody that's in my group who has had books that have been ready to go for years. She's got 6 novels ready to fire and she just never pulled the trigger. But in these last 3 months that we've been doing a writer's group, because I have stared her in the eye and be like, my next book's coming out, where's yours? She has one that's coming out in April, I'm so excited for her, and then she's got another one ready to go for the fall. And so for me, I think writing groups, they don't have to be complicated. Some people do reads where you read 200 words or whatever, you critique it, you can do that. But really just plan a specific time, make it consistent, and show up and just remind people to write, because sometimes that's all they need.
I'm not in a writers group. I see Bookstagram is huge for finding people that are in writers groups, because I get a lot of, you want to join our group. I just don't have the time. I think they're super beneficial, but I think Bookstagram is huge for finding writers groups.
I mean, Julie and I just befriended Natalie C. Parker, and she made the writers group for us. So I do think this is an old introvert's trick, but if you can find an extroverted writing friend, they will, and maybe you are this, they will build the spaces for you, and you can, kind of trade on that. I will say that one of the things I've observed, so Julie and I have been around for about 11 years in the publishing industry.
You've just only existed for 11 years.
No, yeah, that's it. We just sprung into being fully formed like Athena. But one of the things I've noticed is that it's great to have really granular groups in the sense that, okay, I write space operas about lizard people who get into love triangles, right? And our group is only for that. And that is really nice because you're able to have conversations that get really, in depth about your genre and those tropes and expectations and processes and all that. But what I found over time is that the people who have groups that allow for cross-pollination end up having the longest careers. And so if you have a writing group that has a mix of people who are traditionally published, who are small press published, who are self-published, if you have a group that has a mix of genres in it, you typically end up having a lot more information within that well overall. That community base of information is so much bigger. And so those groups that have that sort of diversity of experience tend to, I think, produce writers who are here the longest.
Yeah. Everyone already said such fantastic things, but I am actually going to plug our friend Natalie C. Parker again and say that she owns a company called MadCap where she facilitates retreats. After COVID, she took a lot of things online, but she's going to start planning in-person retreats again soon. She recently planned, she does a huge fellowship program that she works on actually with Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine. So she's very legitimate, she knows what she's doing. And she also has a Patreon where you can subscribe, I think it's just a few bucks a month, and join the private Discord with all these other writers who have joined this Discord, and you can talk about business. There's monthly chats.
And there's weekly sprints.
Yeah, there's almost daily writing sprints, and she has other authors who come in and run the sprints, and so she's a really fantastic resource, and she does pop up locally a lot too, so.
And since COVID hit, it really opened up the space for writers to meet virtually. Let's talk about the pros and cons of meeting virtually versus in person with your writing friends.
I think for writing, I think virtually is just fine. I mean, obviously, yes, if you can get in person, it is great to see people's face, and especially if you're an extrovert that's yelling at them to write, being able to yell in person is way more effective. But as far as writing, I mean, writing's going to be on a computer for most of us. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that still does pen and paper, but you're going to be on the computer. And so I found that my writing group, we actually do more of our activity. We have a Slack that we do during the week, and we are on there all the time,
all the time.
All day. That's probably why you and I are even be more friends now, because now we're talking on Slack all the time. So I have private chats going with all of the members, and then we also have several channels with just off topic or self-promo, and we talk there all the time, and that's how I can follow up with these people. I mean, we still love our in-person, those are very important, but this way we are getting daily feedback on our writing process. So I would say if you do have an in-person, consider adding an online element, something like a Slack or a Discord that's just very casual, easy to maintain, where people can keep up on each other, especially while they're on the computer already writing.
I want to say the biggest and funnest thing, besides the fact that COVID kind of screwed us, is that the book clubs, man. My publisher is in Canada, so they would send my book out, and these women would be like, can you virtually be our guest? We're going to read your book. And we're talking 50-year-old women who love my books because they're set in the 80s. And you get on there and they've been having wine for a couple of hours before your meeting. And they're just tearing apart everything about the 80s. And they're drunk and they're excited about your book. And they're in Canada. I would never have been able to afford to do that, right? Yeah. So I got to meet a ton of people virtually through book clubs because of moving online. So I love it.
I just want to put in a quick plug for something called mirror neurons, which my friend Ashley taught me about during the pandemic when my kids were doing virtual school. And basically it means that our brains are wired in such a way that we imitate people around us. This is how teachers can keep control of a group of 30 students, is that we are just sort of wired to do what the group is doing. And so if you have someone either in person or in front of you on a screen that is sitting down in front of a keyboard and typing or writing in a notebook, your brain's automatically going to be like, yes, that's what we should be doing right now. Versus if you're at a coffee shop and you're working and then everyone else is having a great time and a great conversation and hugging their friends and you're like, why do they get to hug their friends and I have to write a book? It's really nice to do like Zooms where you're kind of co-working with someone and you can kind of get that little mirror neuron hit. The downside I will say is that sometimes Julie calls me and she tells me about a thing that she did, like an idea she had or a book she sold, and then I don't know how to react. And then she's like, I can't tell if you're frozen or if you think this is a terrible idea.
We possibly take on too much in our professional lives and are constantly, oh, don't even. Yeah, oh, actually stop. Just point. Yeah, I actually think that, so we started writing together in 2020, in the fall of 2020, right?
Yeah.
That one it really began. And so I think that the pandemic actually made us a lot more comfortable just FaceTiming each other every day for like an hour. And so that when we did start writing, because I live in Texas and she lives in Kansas, and so when we did start writing together, we were already like well in practice of how to communicate with each other throughout the day and like how to work together from far away. And yeah, so I mean, yes, did everything caused by the pandemic suck? Yes, but it did like train all of us to like adjust our working styles and to become a lot more innovative in how we're connecting with people.
So when you're working with other writers, how do you avoid comparing yourself with them and their accomplishments?
That is a thing that's helpful if you have a mixed group where people are different types of publishing, different genres. It does make it easier not to compare. Because like my other friend who's just about to publish, she writes romance. And so I know that her success is going to look entirely different than somebody like me who writes in a very niche genre, completely different, YA dystopian. And so I think that is helpful if you've got a variety. So it's not literally the same books pitching to the same audience. It's going to make it easier. And I think just recognizing that a reader is not going to read just one book in their life. Okay, so if your friend sold a book to your reader, that same reader might still read your book. They are going to read more books. They have not exhausted the reader base. And just recognizing that the more good books there are, the better it is for everybody, even in your genre. So like for me, when I am working with other authors that write in my same niche, I'm like, the more successful you are, the more readers are looking at our niche genre. And then the more healthier this genre is going to be, more people are going to know it exists.
I will say when you are a writer, every writer knows that you're writing a book and there's days where you're like, this is such a badass chapter, and then the next day you're like, this is crap and I don't know why I'm writing. And so if you're working with a writer that's totally successful, I feel like it gives you that boost and the confidence like to have hope that maybe this is good and we can keep going, and I think it helps.
Julie's met Dolly Parton, so that's like, there's no comparing. Like anything I do is never gonna be Dolly Parton. Like the person who invented the Moderna vaccine, Dolly Parton, basically. Whatever, she just funded it, but you know what I mean. I really, very early on, I heard the phrase, it's a community, not a competition. And that really resonated with me because I'm not competitive at all, I'm very passive. I'm like, if I were a dog, I would be like on my back immediately anytime someone walked by. But I really, that really resonated with me because I think, like what Rachel was saying, is that when readers find a good book, they don't close the good book when they're finished and say, well, that was my good book for the year, and now I'll go do other things, now I'll go knit a blanket. Usually what happens is you close a great book and you're like, where's my next great book? Like, where's my next favorite book? Especially in genre. So I do think that people who read literary fiction and commercial fiction tend to read more on the pace of a book a week or a book a month. You will find that genre readers though, sci-fi, fantasy, romance, mystery, these are readers who a book a week is like their tepid pace, right? Like a lot of these readers are reading a book a day. And so there's plenty of room for all of us to be publishing.
Yeah. Yes, and all those things are great, but also I love competition. I'm a Scorpio.
This is why we get along, because she's like, I want to win, and I'm like, you can win.
Yeah, I like it. But I mean, I do have the capacity to be like really happy and excited for my peers and see something and for it to motivate me and be like, I want that. I think that's really cool. There are some peers that I'll be like, I don't want that for you because I think you're a jerk. But for the most part, I love most of my peers and I'm really excited to see them succeed. And seeing authors succeed in new ways that I didn't think were possible, like, just gives me hope for the longevity of writing and our careers. This is a very old business and it's like very much behind the times in many ways. And there are so many things out there in the world that threaten the existence of publishing. And so seeing authors do really incredible, fantastic things is a constant reminder that like we will always need stories and we will always need storytellers. So do something amazing so that I can copy you and try to do it too.
Well, once you've read one of these really great books, you want to talk about it. That's just like the normal reaction is telling people about these great books. Where are the best places to connect with other readers who like what you like?
This is a tough one because you're so much better at social media. I like to avoid it and then just send you my books and be like, hey, can you post on Instagram for me? Because I don't want to. So hashtags are good. Obviously, if you are on social media, you can figure out what is the hashtag for your genre or your trope. Because especially for like on TikTok with like romance, if you have a particular trope that you like, there's probably a hashtag for it. And then you can search that and you can find other books and other authors that are in that same genre. That's about as far as my knowledge will go past it.
I agree though. I mean, book talk is huge. It is huge for writers, especially if you're romance or YA, because the younger kids are on book talk, TikTok. So it's Instagram and book talk. I mean, that's huge. You guys probably have more experience with it than we do, but
She's a recluse.
I don't do that. But I did used to be a librarian. And what I will say about when I worked at the library, the #1 predictor of whether or not a patron would take home a book was not the cover, was not the placement on a display. It was if I had read the book. Because if I had read it, then I would be like, oh my God, you have to read, I can't even think, Candace Millard. Someone was talking about Candace Millard earlier. Like, you have to read this book about Andrew Garfield. Did you know the doctors stuck their dirty fingers in his bullet hole wound, after he got shot, and that's why he died? The doctors killed President Garfield. And I'm able to talk about it knowledgeably enough to pitch it within a minute or two. And that was almost all the time someone would walk away with the book. And what I think that Book Talk does is it replicates that word of mouth. Because it's people organically talking about something they're excited about. There's a lot of beautiful flat lays on Instagram. You can do a lot of beautiful posts. But something about someone just organically off the cuff being like, I read this book and it made me cry every day until I finished it, is really powerful because another person is telling you about their valid experience. And again, it doesn't all come down to neurology, but we are wired to respond to that. Yes. So I think that is that sharing organically and meaning it. So not sort of, oh, I feel like everyone else likes this book, so I feel like I should talk about it like I like it. No, like that real genuine response, I think is what people really like.
Yeah. It does all come down to neurons. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it's true.
Dr. Julie's in the house.
Dr. Julie says so. Yeah, so I really am fascinated by like the ways that like publishing has hopped around to all these different like platforms on the internet. When I first started out, it was like blogs were the thing. And so seeing these people find new homes like on Twitter and then Instagram and now Book Talk has been really cool, but I also think it's really important that writers and authors have an understanding that like writers and authors can exist like on the outskirts or around those communities, but essentially those communities are for readers, so that they can freely discuss your books and say things that might hurt your feelings. And so it's really important to like keep those spaces safe and sacred for readers. And once you become a writer, you have to re-examine your like space in that ecosystem. So whether it's like, you used to be a book reviewer and you have like a Goodreads account with all these like absolutely scalding reviews, like you have to really reimagine or rethink what that means for you in your new capacity in the world of books.
So this is going to be more for Carrie, because we met through follow trains on Bookstagram.
Yeah.
Let's discuss like the pros and cons of follow trains.
I have so many cons for follow trades, I'm gonna say, because I think it's a time suck. I mean, like, you're doing all these follow trades instead of writing, right? So
What is a follow train?
So it's when somebody like LiteraryHypeWoman will say, like, we had a Missouri follow train. Like, if you're in Missouri, let's all follow each other if we're readers, if we're writers, and everybody follows each other. But you know, Bookstagram caps you, what, 7,500 or whatever Instagram does. And so I think it kind of screws you on that, because if you're following some guy in Jeff City that doesn't even give a crap about your books, and you don't really give a crap about his books, well, what's it really getting you? It's not really a community, it's not really someone you're gonna write with. But then it brings you people like friendships like this that you would have never, so I think you just have to be very careful with who you're following and who you're having to follow you, if it's meaningful for you both.
Especially don't get your feelings hurt, because a lot of people will immediately follow you, and once you follow them back, they will unfollow you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, at first that really bothered me, but now it's like, whatever, I know it's gonna happen. Like, I've lost 40 followers this week. Just, you post a picture that's not about a book and people will follow you. So how do you go about picking what social media site is the best fit for you to find readers?
I'll start, and then you give you a little breather. The answer for she and I is to just let me be in charge and let me choose. And so you have a pretty active following on Facebook. So you've got like a Facebook readers group and stuff like that you tend to. And so she keeps like her eye mostly on Facebook. You can talk more about this, I promise. But for us and our books, we really do focus on Instagram and then sometimes TikTok if we feel like we have like the spoons to give it, because it'll take us like 6 hours to film a 10-second video. So we do sometimes focus on TikTok, but for the most part, like, we find most of our following on Instagram and Facebook.
Well, and what's nice about Instagram is that it's pretty time agnostic. So we can put together a post at 2 in the morning and then just hit publish at like 8 in the morning or something. And I find that that's really nice because we can just do it while we're on the couch in our pajamas. No one has to put makeup on or anything like that. I am not a huge fan of social media because I don't like the context collapse that comes with it, and context is my favorite thing. And so I actually prefer newsletters. I like following author newsletters, I like following influencer newsletters, and I like sending newsletters because I feel then I have a little bit more room to actually connect and actually share something than I would get in a social media post. And so I don't think newsletters really count as social media, but I find them to be my most valuable tool for connecting with other bookish people, not just other authors.
It's interesting when you say that about newsletters. It's kind of like a blog that's going to hit your email,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
sure.
that's good. I never really thought of it that way. For me, it's been Book Talk. I think Instagram too, but Book Talk I've sold the most books because of Book Talk, because there's teenagers that are crying and they're holding my book and they're like, otherwise, it's just like a crapshoot, really.
Yeah, I think it's knowing your audience and where are they hanging out. So if you're writing for teens, what platform are they on? If you're writing for women 40 and older, where are they? What genre are you writing? So for me, I found on Twitter, for me is not a place to find readers, it's a place to find writers. The writing community is really strong on Twitter. It is an amazing place to find your hype team, to find people to trade reviews with, to find critique partners. If you want somebody to celebrate your success, just post about it on Twitter, #writing community, and 1,000 people will be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. But it is not a place to find readers. And as soon as I realized that, I stopped stressing out, and I will post when I have a new book on Twitter, because I do want my friends to know, but I'll post about it once, maybe twice, and that's it. And I don't stress about it because I'm not trying to get sales out of Twitter, I'm trying to make friends. And for me, Instagram I found is the best way to keep up with people who have been following my books for a while, because I have a lot of people on Instagram who've been with me since I published 10 years ago, and that was the best way for me to engage my old base. As far as meeting new readers, I tried TikTok and I could not handle it. It was too stressful. I'm like, we'll come back to this later. So I actually will piggyback on the newsletter thing. I found that's worked really well for me, partially because I write in a niche genre, and so if you can find a newsletter, for me it's bargain ebooks, in your genre that has a reader list built for your genre, that was actually the best way for me to find new people, because I'm just showing them my new book. Here's just my series starter, it's on a discount, and that was actually my best way to find actual readers.
I will say Twitter, if you are trying to get a literary agent, man, they are on there telling you what they think sucks, what they think is great, what they're sick of seeing in their inbox. So if you are a query agent, Twitter is an awesome place because agents are just putting it out there.
And whether or not they're open currently.
Yeah.
Okay, do any of you guys have any questions for the panel?
I actually have 2 questions.
Okay.
But the first one is really simple. What was the name of that writing contest website that you guys said first?
NaNoWriMo?
No. Before that, there was like a writing contest.
Write Mentor
Right.
is starting right now too, so they're taking manuscripts right now.
Okay.
It's on Twitter.
And what was your second question?
And my second question was, I'm currently in college and have a part-time job. How would you balance like going to school, having a part-time job with trying to write like a book?
I started writing when I was working a full-time job and a part-time job. At the same time, I was a librarian and I was also working in retail. And I found that I had to write in like little spaces of time. And so even on my break, I had, you know how you have like that Post-it makes like the big tall Post-its, now they're lined. I would carry around a Post-it pad with me and just literally start like handwriting on my break. And then at night when I got home, I would transcribe it. It would give me the time to like flesh out everything that I had thought of, or tidbits of like things that I had written throughout the day. And so like a notes app on your phone, just something that you can continuously be working on. So it's always circulating in your mind, whether you're using public transportation in your commute and you have a few minutes to think about it or sit down, like, you know, jot some things down. That's really important. Another thing that was really, really fantastic advice that I got early on is that you have to treat yourself as though you're being paid to write long before anyone else is paying you to write. And so if you want to be a writer, like there's just like we all have so many people that come to us that are like, oh, I wish I could write, I wish I had the time. None of us had the time to write. When Sierra first started writing, or when Sierra like really first started writing seriously, like you had 2 like young children at home. You were working, like no one actually has the time to write. And so whether you're promising yourself 30 minutes a week, 30 minutes a day, like treat it like a job that you were clocking in and out of, and like grant yourself that time.
I just want to second that, like writing in sort of the margins of your day. Colleen Hoover, who sells enough books to fill the Grand Canyon at this point, she writes a lot in her notes app just throughout the day. And so I do think shrinking writing from I need to be sitting down at a computer for at least 2 hours for it to feel like a writing session, shrinking it down into like 15-minute chunks. Like I have 15 minutes, can I write a paragraph? Can I write 2 paragraphs? I think Annie Lamott calls it the 1-inch window. Like just give yourself a 1-inch window to fill. And then I would also like give yourself the grace of knowing that all of the thinking work and intellection and ideating that you're doing when you're not at a keyboard counts as writing. That's writing too. So when you're in your car and you're listening to a song and you're like, this is the scene, like that's all work too, that counts. Because it means when you're able to sit down, that work is pre-done and you're able to just sort of transcribe it.
I agree, and I'm huge with my notes app. I'm at work sometimes in a meeting and, you know, I'm on my notes app, not paying attention to my job. Anyways, but I will say, when you get home and maybe you have time between dinner and kids and work and you see something that's sparked, you sacrifice your sleep. If a chapter is really working on something that you jot down in your day, Rachel and I were talking earlier, you don't maybe sleep that much. I mean, you just don't.
Sleep is for the weak.
Yeah.
Really. No, seriously, we do sometimes sacrifice sleep. Don't do that all the time. Okay, but I'm going to second everything they said is, so number 1, figure out when you write best, because everyone's different. So for me, writing in a small window really does not work, rarely. Occasionally, if I've got something like I'm really burning, I got to get it down. I can, but not for me. I really need to be more focused, and I know that. So I know that it would be better if I have this 5-minute window, if I just get my chores done, so that when I'm all done with dinner, all done with whatever, I could actually write for an hour hours. So find out whenever works for you, wherever works for you, and then make that a priority. And you do have to make it a priority. Like you said, act like you're getting paid before you're getting paid. This is a job. This is important. And you might have to make sacrifices, preferably not on sleep, sometimes on sleep, but more so it's like social or other commitments that you may have to say, no, I cannot do that right now. And to just be very careful what you say yes to. And then yes on the background processing, that's what we call it. My alpha readers here, hi. And that's what I call it, is I am thinking about my book all day, even when I'm not writing. And I will fire off ideas to like my alpha reader, just to make sure it sticks. And I have probably worked out the whole scene in my head before I sit down. And I know that if I've been thinking about my book all day, when I do sit down to write, I don't have to get over that hump. And so now when I'm sitting down, I'm actually going. I probably can get a whole scene out in a short period of time, is because I've been working on it in the background.
Any other questions?
And maybe the time management aspect might have answered part of my question, but as far as becoming a writer goes, what would you say is something that someone who literally is taking the first 2-inch step to becoming a writer, where would I start?
Read what you want to write. Like, just think about what you want to write and gobble it up and start imitating it. Write fan fiction about it. Write it until like it becomes your own, and you'll know when that switch happens, when it feels like this is something that feels like it has your signature on it. But reading as much as you can. The other thing that I will say is I hate writing advice. Like, it infuriates me. It makes me feel like I'm doing it wrong. And so don't get caught up in, like, it's important for you to like maybe listen to what's working for other people, and so that you can add that to your process. But don't get so caught up in thinking that someone has a shortcut or someone has the right way to do things, because the shortcut doesn't exist and they're in just as much pain as you are. I say that in like a nice way, like fun pain. But really, like, it's hearing about other people's process turns into a comparison game for me, and I have such like a thing in my head about always believing that everyone else is smarter than me, and so that is the fastest way for me to start to doubt myself, is thinking that someone else has figured it out and I can't do how they figured it out. Writing is one of the few jobs where it doesn't matter how you do it, it just matters that it gets done.
I would second that. I really would seek out, advice and learning that's descriptive, not prescriptive. There are a lot of people out there who will charge $800 for a course to give you information that is just flat out not going to work for your genre or your process. And so I would really seek out people who say more things along the lines of, this worked for me, instead of I have the magic pill, right? And then I'd also, to again second what Julie said about reading what you want to write, that is so useful even later on, because it gives you an idea of the market and it gives you an idea of the comps. And so whether or not you query or self-publish, that knowledge of the market is something you need to have anyway. Plus it's fun to read what you love.
Yeah, I'd say read what you love and do it a little bit different. Do something different on your own.
I'm going to be the one person that says it is okay if you don't have time to read a lot, because I read a lot growing up. I read the whole library, and now I publish a book a month. I don't have time to read, and that's okay, because everybody's different. But I will say, like, as far as getting started, I would say the biggest advice that I can give is decide what you want out of writing, because everybody's different. Some people want to just write a memoir that they want to publish, self-publish, and they want to give it to 10 uncles and aunts, and that's all they want. Some people just want to say that they did it so they can hold a book in their hands, and that's all they need. Some people want to make it a career. They want to be on the New York Times bestseller list. They want to ultimately do this full time. You need to decide what you want, because the paths for those two people are going to be very different. Because if you just want to hold it in your hands, give it to a couple friends for Christmas, that's very different than somebody that wants to go hard and wants to make this a career. They're going to need to make different decisions. It's going to need to be a bigger priority. They're going to have to think about the market. They're going to have to do all this stuff that maybe that other person doesn't need to do, because that's not what they want. And I'd say, because I've been freelance editing and book designing for a decade, and that's the biggest problem I run into, is people where the effort they're putting into it and what they want to get out of it don't meet. They want to get the New York Times bestseller, but they're putting in a dime store effort. or going about it the wrong way. So decide what you want and then let that make your choices. Because if you just want the book to hold in your hands, don't put the pressure on yourself to write a book in a month or whatever. Don't do that. Do it and then make sure you're enjoying it. But if you want to go for business, then surround yourself with people who are doing it for business and let them be the people that are giving you advice.
We have time for one more quick question.
Since 2020, the book community has risen by 14%, and that just opens when TikTok kind of flew off as well. But do you think it's more because people were at home and they needed to do something because you couldn't watch movies or anything? Or do you think it's more TikTok or both? That kind of more fast-paced, people are kind of consuming more books, their words are kind of spreading more, the book community is bigger now because of TikTok, or because you just think people are just reading more?
You have a good answer for this. Do I? Yeah, you've talked about this.
No. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I will say that I did notice during the pandemic that a lot of industries, people were working from home for the first time, or, were doing different things. And so I saw a lot of posts where people were like, I'm making sourdough bread all day and I'm napping all day because, I have to take time off or whatever. And there was a lot of like economic bad stuff that came with that. But publishing was like, everyone speed up. Everyone speed up and make more books because people need books to read during the pandemic. And so all the authors I knew were not making sourdough bread. We were all making more books. And it worked out. I think the timing, I think it's actually both is the answer really, is that the upswell of book recommendations on Book Talk coincided with people having the time to read. And also realizing that a book is something that's going to give you a lot of value for money. If you buy an ebook for like even a high price ebook for like $11.99, it's still cheaper than a movie ticket, and it's going to give you a lot more hours of entertainment than a movie. And so I think a lot of people finally realized, oh, this is great value for money. This is a way I can make my dollar stretch further for entertainment.
I will say there is a conspiracy theory among some booksellers that Colleen Hoover invented Book Talk, because at the beginning of the pandemic she put the majority of her books on Kindle for free, and that was when everyone was home playing on TikTok, so people were getting free books from her and started playing on TikTok. So that is the Barnes & Noble conspiracy theory. Colleen Hoover invented Book Talk.
Genius.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we are about out of time, so let's just go down the line, talk about where to find you online, here at the convention, if you're still doing stuff this weekend.
You can find me online at juliemurphywrites.com or And I'm Julie on basically any social media platform. And we don't have a table at the convention because we're introverts and it's really noisy up there.
Yeah, you can find us at Groom Hour after this panel. You can find me at The Sierra Simone, or if you go to And I'm Julie, you'll find my posts because she just makes me a collaborator on all of her posts.
It's true.
And then you can find my website at thesierrasimone.com.
You can find me at CL Beamer on every social media platform there is. And then my books are sold everywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target.
Yeah, Target. I want to go Target. So you can find me online at rachelnewhouse.com, and then on Twitter it's Rachel Newhouse with an _. But I do actually have a table here at the con. I'm 1738 over in the Artist Crafter Alley. So feel free to come by because I've got stickers and fun stuff. So I'd love to talk with you more over there.
And I am Literary Hype Woman on pretty much all social media. Literary Hype on YouTube, where I do author interviews. Hint, hint, wink, wink. They might be appearing soon. Just spoilers. Go subscribe. And many of us, I think everybody up here has bookmarks. So if you want a bookmark from us, come up and get them. But thank you guys for coming, and enjoy the rest of the con.